Hi. Not sure if you saw the gunshot, it was quite fast. Anyway, in July of 1917, in the capital city of Russia, Petrograd, there was a revolt. And when I say revolt, I mean a disorganized mass of protests aiming to overthrow the provisional government of Russia. These protests failed because the people that they wanted to be in charge of Russia refused to be in charge of Russia. So I suppose they all just either went home or got crushed by reactionary forces. But anyway, in the aftermath of this revolt, a guy called Kornilov was promoted to the supreme commander of the Russian army. But he only accepted this position under the condition that the government not be allowed to interfere with his commands. Then, when he became in charge of the Russian army, he immediately set up some of his cavalry in a place that wouldn't make much sense if you were going to war with the Germans, which they were at war with the Germans, but it would make quite a lot of sense if you were planning to launch an attack on, say, Moscow or Petrograd. This guy was plotting something. You see, this guy absolutely hated the Petrograd Soviet, which was officially the city council of Petrograd, but in practice it was like a sort of joint government, co-government with the provisional government, because that's how powerful it was. And he also hated the Bolshevik Party, and he was just itching for an excuse to march into Petrograd and eliminate the Soviet, eliminate the Bolshevik Party, hang Vladimir Lenin, hang all the leaders. He was more than willing to hang all the leaders of the Petrograd Soviet, or the Bolshevik Party. But here's the thing, he wanted to wait for provocation first, you know. There'd been a revolution in July, what if there was another revolution? And when the other revolution came, he was going to be ready. And he was going to go in, use that revolution as justification, and defeat the Bolsheviks. And this guy claimed not to want anything for himself, of course. He just wanted to save Russia from the evil Soviet. And we don't know whether or not this was true. Maybe, if he succeeded, it would have been a military dictatorship. Or maybe he genuinely just wanted to save Russia. We'll never know. He also thought maybe that instead of fighting my way to the capital, I can simply get the provisional government to let me into the capital. So he sent Kerensky a long list of demands that would have effectively given him complete control of the capital city of Russia. And so Kerensky read these demands and realised, oh my god, I probably shouldn't have promoted this guy. This guy's absolutely plotting something. He immediately sent Kerensky a telegram telling him that he was fired and asking his chief of staff to take command. But his chief of staff refused to take command instead. So, guess what happened? Kerensky realised he had to launch his coup now. So, he ordered his cavalry to march on Petrograd. But here's the thing. No one in Russia supported him. Or barely anybody in Russia supported him. The train station workers refused to send trains full of Kornilov's troops to the capital. And every time he arrived at a train station, his troops would be surrounded by loyal soldiers and loyal workers, loyal to the government that is, yelling at his troops, "Don't attack the city! Call off the coup, don't do it!" They were encouraging his troops to either desert or defect or launch a mutiny or something, and all that yelling and propaganda had an effect. Lots of his troops did end up, deserting. Propagandists also infiltrated his army to try and convince his soldiers to desert, and that worked as well. Kornilov was losing a lot of men to desertion, and he wasn't getting any closer to the capital because, like I said, the train station workers weren't sending his troops there. And also, the telegraph workers also weren't transmitting the commands of his generals, so communication in Kornilov's army was just terrible. Meanwhile, in the capital city, the Soviet, who knew that Kornilov was probably coming for them, went to Kerensky and demanded that Kerensky completely and unconditionally crush Kornilov's revolt. The Bolsheviks also wanted to help put down this coup, so they were able to get the approval of several other political parties to rearm and re-legalise the Red Guard. The Red Guard was the defence military detachment of the Bolsheviks. And so now the Bolsheviks were armed. But it didn't really matter that the Bolsheviks were armed, because no fighting would be necessary against Kornilov. Every single one of his troops just deserted without a shot being fired. Remember all those people who were surrounding Kornilov's army and yelling at them? Infiltrating his troops, convincing them to desert? Yeah, that worked. Kornilov's army just melted away. But the coup still had a lot of consequences. It was great for the Bolsheviks, because now, not only did the Bolsheviks have their Red Guard armed and re-legalised, but also they'd become so much more popular. Quite a lot of that propagandising the workers to desert and having the telegraph workers not transmit the communications, and having all those railroad workers not send the trains further. Well, quite a lot of that had been orchestrated by the Bolsheviks. Like, they'd convinced the workers to do that. I mean, not all of it was orchestrated by the Bolsheviks, obviously, but the Bolsheviks did also get their Red Guard ready to defend the city. It means that the Bolsheviks are so much more popular. And what does that mean? It means that the Petrograd and Moscow Soviets, the two most important cities in Russia, elected a Bolshevik majority. So next week I'm going to release, part 5, I think? Yeah, I think it is part 5. Next week I'm going to release part 5 of my Russian Revolution series. And it'll probably be on the October Bolshevik Revolution, unless I find something else to talk about that came between September and November. Still, stick around for that. Bye.